Hi guys, I'm Natalie, and today I'm here to share with you the results of our location analysis to compare the performance of the DRAM shop's new central location to their main location downtown on Front Street. So here we go. This slide is just to show you the summary of what questions we are trying to answer in this presentation. So we look at how do central sales compare to the first 4 months of fronts. Then we look at patterns, how they differ by day of week or by time of day. And then we look at which items, categories, and sizes are selling better at central than at front. So now I'm going to start talking about the comparison of total sales. We look at the first 17 weeks of business at each location. This was calculated by subtracting total sales at Front Street from total sales at Central. On the graph, Sundays are represented by the lightest blue line, and Saturdays are represented by the darkest. You'll notice if you start to look deeper into the graph that there is no data for Mondays because there was no data available for Mondays for the first 17 weeks of the Front's location, so we couldn't make an accurate comparison. But if you look at this, our main insights from this chart is that Central is not doing as well in terms of overall sales, particularly on Fridays. However, the difference is less dramatic on some weekdays and on a few Saturdays where Central actually outperforms Front Street. Next, we look at traffic patterns by day of the week and hour of the day for each location. We'll compare the average number of transactions and the average number of sales. Unlike the previous data, these next few charts display data from June 6, 2019 to October 1st, 2019 for both locations. We start by looking at patterns by day of the week. So here are the average sales and average number of transactions at both locations. We have Front Street in light blue and Central in dark blue. The main insights that we gained from these charts are that Fridays are very popular at Front Street location on both charts in terms of transactions and average sales. But both in terms of transactions and sales remain very steady at Central every day of the week, which we thought was pretty interesting. Now we have the average amount customers spend per transaction at each location. Once again, Front in the light blue and Central in the dark blue. We saw in the last slide that there are fewer transactions overall at the Central location, but this chart is actually interesting because it shows that customers at the Central location are consistently spending just a slightly bit more per transaction than the Front Street customers. All right, now here we have traffic patterns by time of day. Here we're looking at average transactions per hour for Sundays through Wednesdays when business hours are from noon to 10 p.m. We labeled Sundays as the lightest blue and Wednesdays as the darkest. As you can see from these charts, business starts to pick up around 1 p.m. If you look at Monday through Wednesday, business picks up considerably at 5 p.m. and drops around 8 to 9 p.m. at the Front location and a little earlier around like 7 to 8 p.m. at Central. On Sundays, business usually peaks at 5 p.m. and drops usually around 6 to 7 p.m., so a little shorter time period. And then business times, the busiest business times are Tuesdays at 5 p.m. at Front location, and Tuesday at 6, and Wednesdays from 5 to 7 at the Central location. Now we have average transactions by hour for Thursday through Saturdays when business hours are noon to 11 p.m. Thursdays are now in light blue and Saturdays are in the darker blue. So once again, business usually starts to pick up around after 1 p.m. If you look at Thursdays and Fridays, business picks up around 5 p.m. and drops around 9 to 10 p.m. at Front Street, and once again a little earlier between 7 to 8 at Central. On Saturday, business peaks at 5 p.m. at both locations, and then drops around after 6 to 7 at Central, and then 8 to 9 on Front. If you look at our busiest times, Thursday at 8 and Friday from 5 to 8 at Front location, and then probably Friday from 6 to 8 and Saturday around 5 o'clock at the Central location. All right, so now we're going to change courses a little bit and look at items performance. We look at the top 5 items of Front and Central locations. The first slide, we're going to look at the most popular items from the first year at Front compared to the current year right now at Central. And then the next one, we'll look at both the top current items. So here we are comparing the top 5 most popular items sold in the first year at Front Street location to the top 5 most popular items at central location. So if you look right away, you notice that Blackfoot IPA is hands down the most popular item. And then once you start to look at the other items, it starts to go up a little bit, maybe due to a possible different client base or so. So at front in 2015, Fresh Squeezed IPA was the second most popular item compared to Central, which is actually kombucha. So now this slide's a little bit different because we wanted to compare Front's current top 5 most popular items to Central. So Central's graph is the same as the last slide, but we wanted to compare it to see what's really popular at Front now, which, no shocker, Blackfoot IPA is still the most popular drink. But the surprising thing is kombucha now has grown since DRAM Shop is open. And it's definitely now our current trend regardless of location, which we found very interesting. So now we're going to take even a further step back, and instead of look at items, we're going to look at the actual categories performance of each location. And once again, we looked at the top 5 categories of Front and Central locations, but now we're just staying current. So the next few graphs are just going to be from 2019. So here we have our graphs for our top 5 best-selling categories at both Front location and Central location. As you can automatically see, hands down, IPA Draft is the best-selling category regardless of location. Once you start to look at the other best-selling categories, you see that it changes a little bit, actually a lot of it. So at Front location, it's all different types of beer. If you keep going through the list, it isn't even on here, it's more types of beer. But if you look over at Central's top sold categories, you see that wine is actually their second most, and that kombucha and snacks both make an appearance on their top 5 sold categories. So this could attest to an entirely different clientele, which we thought was pretty interesting. So we've looked at items and we looked at categories. So now I want to look at size performance. We look at top 5 sizes sold of growlers and non-growlers at Front and Central locations. First, instead of diving deeper into size comparisons, we wanted to show you these charts because we thought they were very interesting to look at growler percentage of DRAM's total sales at each location. So if you see at Front's location, 18% of DRAM's total sales are growler sales, which is thought is pretty cool. And then a little less at Central, which is 7% of DRAM's total sales. So overall, the main insight from this is that growlers are being sold more at downtown location, which is Front. Now we look into specific sizes of growlers. So we have Front versus Central's growler size total sales. So as you see, automatically 64 ounces are the most popular size of growlers at both locations. And actually similar enough, it's the same pattern at both locations. It goes from 64 to 32 to 24, and then least popular, the 128 ouncer. So now we look at non-growler sizes. So the most popular at both locations are pint sizes. And then I think once again it's Munich for second, but the interesting thing here is that glass makes an appearance as the 3rd top sold size at Front location when it doesn't even make an appearance at Central's top sold sizes. So our next few slides go over just a summary of our findings that we've talked about so far in the presentation. So I'm going to roll through these pretty quickly so that we can get towards our recommendations for DRAM Shop. So overall, as we've discussed, compared to Front Street's first 17 weeks of business, Central is not performing as well. Fridays and Saturdays have the most dramatic difference, but this makes sense because people are more likely to go downtown on weekend nights, and obviously Central is not in that location. So, and then we also discussed how the difference is less dramatic on the weekdays, and we even talked about how Central sometimes outperformed Front just every so often on a few days. Now remember, as we talked about day of week patterns, that Fridays are the most popular downtown location, which is Front. And then business is steady all week at the Central location, but customers at the Central location are spending slightly more per transaction than the customers right downtown, which is possibly due to a different clientele. Now to summarize the time of day patterns. As we saw at both locations, business starts to pick up around after 1 p.m. And through Monday through Friday at both locations, it starts to pick up considerably after 5 o'clock. On the weekends, business peaks around 5 and drops after 6. If you look specifically at front location, the business drops around 8 and 9 on the weekdays, and then at central, business drops around 7 to 8. And then if you look at both front and central, they both have different popular and busiest times. All right, and now to summarize the items. As we saw at both locations, Blackfoot IPA is the best-selling item and kombucha is the second best-selling. So we saw also the best-selling categories. IPA draft is the best-selling category at both locations. However, at front locations, best-selling categories are all different types of beer, whereas centrals are not beer, but instead contain wine, snacks, and kombucha. Now for sizes, we saw that no matter the location, pints are the best-selling categories, as well as 64-ounce growlers, and that both locations have similar growler size patterns. All right, so now we want to finish up our presentation based on our recommendations for DRAM Shop. We use these recommendations based on the facts and findings that we talked about before in this presentation. So first one we thought was pretty straightforward, but we wanted to advertise the new location at the downtown location, just because the front street location drives in a little bit more traffic, so it'd be good to bring awareness to those customers to probably know that Central is open. Then we were thinking to open at 1 p.m. just because there wasn't very many transactions between 12 and 1, so we thought that would save a little bit of time or money. Now we're looking at possibly cutting back on beer categories at Central. This is just due to the less popular beer categories compared to the front location. So Central was more based on wine, kombucha, and snacks, so we thought it'd be more important to explore those options, which is how we go into the food options. We thought it was really cool that snacks were really popular at the Central location, because if you look at the time that most people go to Central, it's around dinner time, like work days, so they're probably willing to want to eat more, and as we saw from earlier, that they are willing to spend more. So these are our recommendations. Let me know what you think, and we just want to thank you so much for listening to our presentation. Have a great day.